A racist officer thought he could assault an innocent black woman and get away with it. But what he didn't know was that she carried a badge more powerful than his own, and when the truth came out, karma hit harder than he ever imagined. The night was calm, the streets quiet under the glow of dim streetlights. A black woman in her early 40s parked her car outside a small convenience store. She had just finished a long day of work. Her dark navy suit still pressed neatly, her posture upright, her face calm. She moved with the grace of someone who was used to carrying herself with authority, but to anyone passing by, she looked like just another citizen running a late-night errand. She stepped inside the store, bought a few essentials, and returned to her car. The plastic bag rustled softly in her hand as she approached the sleek black sedan. She unlocked the door, slid her bag into the passenger seat, and was just about to sit when the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind her. "Hey, you!" a harsh voice barked. She turned, startled but composed. A white police officer in his 30s stood a few feet away, one hand resting on his belt near his holstered weapon, the other gripping a flashlight. His eyes narrowed suspiciously, his jaw tight. He scanned her car, then her suit, then her face, as if every detail was somehow incriminating. "Yes, officer," she said politely, her voice calm. The officer stepped closer, the beam of his flashlight glaring across her eyes. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. She blinked, raising a hand slightly against the light. "I just came to buy some groceries." "Is there a problem?" The officer scoffed. "At this hour? In this neighborhood? Don't play smart with me." His tone dripped with arrogance. The woman took a deep breath, choosing patience. "As I said, officer, I just stopped at the store. I live nearby." But the officer wasn't listening. His gaze lingered on her car, sleek and polished, clearly expensive. His lips curled into a mocking smirk. "Nice ride. Doesn't really look like it belongs to you. Why don't you tell me whose car this really is?" Her eyes steadied, but her voice remained even. "It's mine. I have the registration inside if you'd like to see it." Instead of responding, the officer stepped closer, his presence turning more aggressive. "Step away from the car," he ordered. She hesitated. "Excuse me?" "You heard me?" he barked. "Step away from the car. Put your hands on the hood." She glanced at him, her calm expression unwavering. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong." "I don't see why." Before she could finish, he shoved her shoulder roughly, forcing her against the car. Her palms hit the cold metal of the hood. Gasps rose from a couple of bystanders who had just walked out of the store. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, her tone still composed though her body was pinned. "Don't talk back," the officer snapped, pressing her harder against the car. "You think you're special because you're dressed nice? You think that makes you above the law?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't resist. Instead, she lifted her eyes toward the small crowd beginning to gather. A few people held up their phones, recording. The officer, noticing, only seemed to grow bolder, as though putting on a performance. "This is exactly the problem," he muttered loudly. "People like you thinking you can just walk around like you own the place. Not tonight." The woman exhaled slowly, her patience steady like stone. She could have ended this at any moment. She knew that. But she also knew the value of letting the officer show his true colors, of letting him dig the hole deeper. "Officer," she said softly, her voice cutting through the chaos, "are you sure you want to continue this?" He laughed, shoving her again against the hood. "Oh, I'm more than sure. And when I'm done, you'll wish you hadn't mouthed off to me." The crowd murmured, some shaking their heads, others whispering. The woman's eyes remained calm, unshaken. She knew the truth, that arrogance never lasts, that justice, one way or another, always reveals itself. And in a matter of minutes, this officer would learn just how badly he had underestimated the woman standing before him. The cold metal of the car hood pressed against the woman's palms as the officer pinned her down, his flashlight clattering against the pavement as he pulled out his radio. His voice was sharp, laced with arrogance, as he barked into it. Suspicious suspect detained. Possible stolen vehicle. The crowd behind him grew larger. A few people who had just finished shopping lingered near the sidewalk, their eyes wide, their phones held high to capture every second. The hum of whispered outrage began to rise, but the officer seemed deaf to it, too caught up in the illusion of power. The woman, her cheek pressed close to the cool surface of the car, spoke calmly. "Officer, there's been a mistake. This is unnecessary. I can explain." Her composure only irritated him further. "Explain?" he sneered, pressing her wrist harder against the hood. "You think you're clever, don't you? Walking around in that fancy suit, driving a car like this, acting like you're untouchable." Her voice remained steady. "I'm not acting. Everything here is mine, and I've done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong," he barked, laughing bitterly. He glanced at the crowd, puffing up his chest. "She says she's done nothing wrong, folks. Then why is she out here at this hour, in a car that's clearly above her pay grade?" The crowd stirred, uncomfortable. A woman shouted from the back, "Leave her alone, officer. She hasn't done anything." Another voice echoed, "We're recording this." But the officer ignored them. He leaned down close to the woman's ear, his words dripping with disdain. "You don't belong here. People like you never do. And I'm here to remind you of that." For the first time, the woman's jaw clenched. Not out of fear, but out of anger carefully restrained. Still, she did not fight back. She refused to give him the satisfaction. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, her voice calm, deliberate. "If you truly believe that, officer, then perhaps you should take a closer look at who I am." Her words unsettled him, but he masked it with another shove. "Save your speeches. You're not special." He yanked open the car door, rummaging through the front seat as if expecting to find something incriminating. Her bag of groceries spilled across the ground, apples rolling across the pavement, a loaf of bread tumbling out of its torn wrapper. The crowd gasped at his recklessness, some booing softly, others filming closer. The woman turned her head just enough to see her belongings scattered. Still, her voice carried no desperation. "You're embarrassing yourself, officer," she said quietly. Her calmness gnawed at him. He wanted her afraid, begging, broken. Instead, she was composed, dignified, unshaken. His face reddened with frustration. "Shut your mouth," he snapped. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. The metallic click rang in the night as he prepared to restrain her fully. The crowd erupted louder now. "This is wrong," one man shouted. "She hasn't done anything." Another yelled, "We've got everything on camera." But the officer didn't care. His pride wouldn't allow him to stop, not with so many eyes on him. He needed control, and control, to him, meant humiliation. He grabbed her wrist and yanked it behind her back, the cuff cold against her skin. She winced slightly, not from pain, but from the sheer indignity of it. Yet her voice remained level, steady as a rock. "Are you sure this is the choice you want to make tonight?" The officer's laugh was harsh, hollow. "Oh, I've never been more sure. You're going to learn that when I say move, you move. When I say stop, you stop. That's how this works." The phone's recording shook slightly as people gasped and murmured, their sympathy for the woman growing, their disdain for the officer rising. The woman closed her eyes briefly, steadying her breath. She knew what was coming. She knew the power she held, the truth he hadn't yet uncovered. For now, she let him write his own downfall, stroke by arrogant stroke. And as the cuffs tightened around her wrists, she whispered words he barely heard over the restless crowd. "The law is not on your side tonight. It was a warning, one he would only understand when the truth hit him harder than any punishment ever could. The cuffs clicked shut, the cold steel pressing against the woman's wrists as the officer yanked her arms behind her back. The crowd's protests grew louder, phones capturing every second of the humiliation. The officer smirked, basking in the attention, convinced this display of power proved his authority. But the woman remained calm, her breathing steady, her voice measured. She didn't thrash, didn't beg. Instead, she looked over her shoulder and spoke firmly. "Officer," she said, her tone cutting through the chaos, "you still haven't asked for my identification." He froze for just a second, then scoffed, tugging her upright. "What do I need your ID for? You're already caught." Her eyes narrowed slightly, her calmness unshaken. "If you truly believe that, then check my bag. My wallet is inside." The officer hesitated. The crowd's murmurs pressed against his pride. He wanted to dismiss her, to continue proving himself right. But the phones recording every move made him pause. Reluctantly, he shoved his hand into her purse, pulling out a black leather wallet. He flipped it open with mockery on his face. "Well, let's see who you really are," he muttered. But as his eyes scanned the card inside, the smugness drained from his face. His brows furrowed, his lips parted, his entire posture stiffened. The badge gleamed under the streetlight. Not a driver's license, not an employee ID, a federal law enforcement badge, polished and unmistakable. The crowd gasped. A man shouted, "She's an agent." Another voice rose, "You messed up, officer." The officer's hand shook as he held the wallet. His throat tightened, his arrogance crumbling as quickly as it had risen. He blinked, hoping he was seeing it wrong, but the words were clear. "Special Agent, Department of Justice." The woman turned her head slowly, her eyes locking with his. Calm, steady, piercing. "Now," she said firmly, "would you like to rethink your actions?" His heart pounded. The authority he thought he had just evaporated. In his place stood someone with far greater power, someone he had just assaulted in front of a dozen witnesses and cameras. His mouth went dry. This must be a mistake." "No," she cut him off sharply. "The only mistake here is yours. You saw my skin, my car, and you assumed I didn't belong. You shoved me against my vehicle, you humiliated me, you tried to strip me of dignity. And all the while, you never once thought to check the truth." The officer stammered, his face pale. I didn't know." "You didn't care to know," she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. "That is the difference. You wanted control, not justice. You wanted humiliation, not protection. And now you will answer for it." The crowd cheered, their voices echoing down the street. "That's right," someone shouted. "Karma," another yelled. Phones zoomed in on the officer's trembling hands, still holding the badge that condemned him. The woman turned fully now, her wrists still bound in the cuffs. She lifted them slightly, her eyes sharp. "Well, officer, are you going to unlock these, or will I have to make one phone call and end your career tonight?" His hands fumbled with the keys, nearly dropping them in panic. He unlocked the cuffs quickly, his fingers shaking. As the steel slipped off her wrists, the crowd erupted in applause. The woman rubbed her wrists gently, then stepped closer, her voice low but powerful. "You thought your badge made you untouchable, but respect is not earned through force. It is earned through honor. And tonight, you showed the world what happens when prejudice wears a uniform." The officer's eyes dropped to the ground, shame burning hotter than the flashing lights of his patrol car. The woman slipped her badge back into her pocket, straightening her jacket with calm authority. She turned to the crowd and nodded. "Thank you for standing up. Never stop recording. Never stop speaking." Then she faced the officer one last time, her eyes cold. "This isn't over. I'll see to that." And with that, She walked back to her car, leaving the officer standing frozen in the glow of cell phone cameras, his arrogance shattered, his career hanging by a thread. The officer stood frozen, his hands trembling as he tried to steady himself. The cheers and shouts of the crowd rang in his ears, every word a hammer pounding against his pride. He had thought himself untouchable, but now he was the one exposed. His authority meant nothing in the face of truth, and the truth gleamed in the form of the badge he had foolishly overlooked. The woman adjusted her suit jacket, her movements calm and deliberate. Though her wrists were red from the cuffs, her dignity was unbroken. She stepped forward, closing the space between them. The crowd fell quiet, sensing something important was about to happen. She looked the officer dead in the eye, her voice steady but sharp. "Tell me, officer, do you even know what that badge on your chest is supposed to mean?" He swallowed hard, his throat tight. It means law enforcement, protecting the people." Her expression hardened. "Protecting the people? Is that what you think you just did? Shoving an innocent woman against her own car? Mocking her? Humiliating her in front of strangers?" She gestured toward the crowd, their cameras still rolling. "You didn't protect anyone tonight. You didn't uphold justice. You betrayed it." The officer's face burned with shame. He tried to look away, but her gaze held him like iron. She continued, her voice growing stronger. "You saw me, and instead of seeing a citizen, you saw a target. Instead of showing restraint, you chose aggression. Instead of respect, you chose arrogance. That is not law enforcement, that is abuse." The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone called out, "She's right." Another shouted, "That's what we've been saying all along." The officer's knees felt weak. He opened his mouth, but no excuse came. For the first time, the words he had used so easily against others deserted him. The woman took a step closer, her presence commanding. "I worked my whole life to earn this badge," she said, pulling it from her pocket and holding it up high for everyone to see. The metal caught the glow of the street light, shining brighter than the patrol car's lights. "Do you know what it represents? Responsibility, sacrifice, integrity. Every single day, I am reminded that my duty is not to my ego, but to the people, all of them, regardless of skin, status, or background." She lowered the badge slowly, her voice cutting deep. "But you wore yours tonight like a weapon. You used it to intimidate, not to protect. And in doing so, you dishonored every officer who tries to live by the oath." The officer's head dropped, his voice barely a whisper. "You're right." She tilted her head, her expression unyielding. "Right. No, officer, being right is not enough. You need to understand this. Your badge does not make you powerful. Your character does. And tonight, you showed the world exactly who you are." The crowd erupted again, their voices loud and clear. "Accountability!" One shouted. "Fire him!" Another cried. The officer flinched at the words, each one like a blow. But the woman raised her hand, quieting the crowd. She kept her focus on him. "You're lucky," she said firmly. "Lucky that I believe in justice more than vengeance. Lucky that I won't stoop to your level, because if I did, your career would already be over." She paused, letting the silence sting. "But make no mistake, you will answer for this. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn that the badge is a privilege, not a weapon." Her words echoed in the night, powerful and final. The officer nodded shakily, his eyes wet, his voice breaking. I understand. I'll never forget this." She slipped the badge back into her pocket, her posture tall, her dignity unshaken. "See that you don't," she said softly. The crowd roared in approval, their cheers rising like thunder. The officer stood motionless, stripped of his arrogance, left only with the bitter taste of regret. The woman turned and walked calmly to her car, her steps measured, her presence commanding respect without ever asking for it. She opened the door, slid inside, and with one last look at the officer, she started the engine. The flashing red and blue lights no longer looked like power. They looked like shame, burning brightly against the dark street, a reminder of how quickly arrogance can collapse under the weight of truth. The woman's car rolled away slowly, her taillights fading into the distance. The crowd lingered, their phones still raised, their voices buzzing with disbelief and anger. The officer stood rooted to the spot, his chest heavy, his pride shattered. The flashing lights from his cruiser illuminated his pale face, making him look less like a figure of authority and more like a man caught in his own downfall. The murmurs of the crowd turned into sharp words. "We got it all on video," one man shouted. "This is going online tonight." A woman nearby added, "You're done, officer. She's not just anybody. She's a federal agent." The officer's throat tightened. He knew the crowd was right. Every second of his arrogance, every shove, every insult, it was all captured. And no excuse could erase what the world was about to see. Hours later, the videos flooded social media. Millions watched in shock as the arrogant cop humiliated an innocent woman, only to discover she was a high-ranking federal agent. Comments poured in, demanding justice, demanding accountability. News stations picked it up within the day, headlines flashing across screens. Officer assaults federal agent during traffic stop. Caught on camera, abuse of power exposed. Karma strikes as racist cop learns truth. Inside his precinct, the fallout was immediate. His captain slammed the reports on the desk, his face red with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" the captain roared. "You didn't just embarrass yourself. You embarrassed this entire department." The officer stammered, sweat dripping down his forehead. I didn't know who she was." "That's the point," the captain snapped. "It shouldn't matter who she was. She's a citizen, and you treated her like dirt. Now, the whole country has seen it." By the end of the day, the officer was stripped of his badge and suspended pending investigation. The uniform that once made him feel invincible now sat folded in a locker, nothing more than fabric without honor. His arrogance, his pride, his so-called authority, it had all been reduced to dust by one simple truth: karma never misses. Meanwhile, the woman carried on with dignity. She returned to her office, colleagues greeting her with respect and admiration. Some praised her composure, others her restraint, but she didn't bask in the attention. For her, it wasn't about victory. It was about truth. A few days later, she stood at a podium during a press conference. Reporters filled the room, microphones pointed toward her, cameras flashing. She spoke with the same calm authority she had shown that night. "I didn't come here to celebrate what happened," she began. "I came here to remind everyone of something simple. Badges don't make heroes. Actions do. And justice isn't about power. It's about respect." Her words echoed across the nation. Families watching at home nodded in agreement. Other officers, good ones, felt both shame and inspiration. And those who abused their authority felt a warning chill in their bones. As she stepped down from the podium, the applause filled the room. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a message of strength, a message the world would not forget. The officer, sitting alone in his small apartment, watched the broadcast on his television. His hands trembled as her words replayed in his head. He remembered the cold steel of the badge in her wallet, the steady look in her eyes, the moment his arrogance collapsed. And he realized something he had never admitted before. He had been wrong. Deeply, shamefully wrong. But by then, it was too late. His career, once full of promise, now lay in ruins. The badge he once wore proudly had been stripped away, not by force, but by the truth of his own actions. For the woman, however, life went on with dignity. She continued her work, continued to serve with honor, and continued to be the example of what true justice looked like. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to shout. Her composure had been enough. And so, the story ended where it began, on a quiet street, with flashing lights. But this time, the lights didn't shine for authority. They shone as a reminder. Arrogance always collapses under truth, and karma always arrives, sometimes in the form of a badge, held by the very person you underestimated.